All right. Hi, guys. I'm Cortney Kidd from Floyd Central. This is Christina Crase. What we're going to present to you all today is something that we've actually tried to work out for probably for about 6 or 7 years now, and pieces never just fell into place. But what we actually did this year, we took my AP Biology class and her pre-cal class, and we did a collaborative research project with our kids. We're actually still doing it right now, and they're doing a crime scene investigation with forensic science. So we're going to walk you through what we did with that. Basically, where this whole idea started was we did want to look cross-curricular, and we've tried to work together and collaborate for so long on some sort of project like this because we've been really involved with KVEC. But we did want to show the kids, because we do get those questions that you get all the time, like how is this relevant? Where do I use this in real life? We wanted to show them some applications so they could actually see math and biology being used in a real-world situation. We did use a crime scene setup, and our students were engaged in several different activities. And I think the way we're going to go about the presentation, she's going to do all the math ones, I'll talk to you about the science ones, and we'll just kind of see how that goes. But okay, just some hindsight. Being a criminal is much harder than we thought. Basically, we started ground up with this, and we realized very quickly that there are kits out there that we could have purchased that actually had everything set up for us. A little more expensive than we like, didn't find certain kits until after the fact. So basically what we did was we purchased all the materials separately, and then we had to come up with the crime scene and the murder ourselves. Not very easy for two not so scandalous people. We did borrow some equipment from our health classes upstairs. We staged the crime scene. We have crime scene photos. Basically everything that the kids would get in a real experience if they went somewhere and did this kind of activity on scene at a campus somewhere. One of the first things that they had to do, every group was presented with, again, the access to the crime scene photos. They were introduced to suspect interviews. We gave them kind of like the crime scene background, the information that they would need to kind of set the scenario up without giving them any leeway into who did it, why they done it, and how they do it. And their investigation started from there. And this one's you.
Okay, so at one of the mass stations, it's blood spatter, and I'll show some pictures. You can see the kids. Basically, they just had a packet that they encountered, and it tells them, how blood spatter is used to, measure different things, and how if blood is dropped at a 90-degree angle, it looks circular. If it's dropped at a different angle, it looks more elliptical and stuff like that. And, instead of just giving them a packet to read, they actually were able to drop the blood and see what the different angles made the blood look like, and that's what they're doing in the pictures here. And at the very end of this station, once they get the blood dropped and they see the different patterns, they actually use an Excel sheet, and we give them blood from our crime scene, and they measure it, and they use their Excel They use the Excel sheet, and they can type in, they'll figure out the heights in which the blood actually fell from the victim. So, once they figure out, the victim was shot and where they were shot at, they can use that to kind of estimate how tall the victim was.
The next station that they encountered, and again, they did this sporadically. Like, we didn't assign specific stations to each group to go through at any given time. We had all these different elements set up, and they rotated through as they saw fit. But the next thing that we included was some biology. We did a blood analysis where they were doing blood typing. This drew in the concepts of codominance. Some of my kids could actually look at AB blood types. We also talked about RH factor. And what we did was we basically presented them with 3 different blood samples that were found at the crime scene, and then they were also given blood samples from the 4 suspects, and they had to do a comparison to see who was possibly on the scene and who was not.
Okay, so at the next station, they're pretty much trying to figure out the path of the bullet. And you can see on the wall here, there's bullet holes, and they're measuring the height that the bullet was on the bullet hole was on the wall. They're giving information about how far there was a bloody footprint away from the wall, and they're using right triangle trigonometry to figure out, the height, the shoulder height of the shooter. And they're given different scenarios, and you can see it's very hands-on. I mean, you have one group that's in the floor measuring, other groups actually took the thing off the wall and was measuring that way, and some of them were just drawing. But basically, they use right triangle trigonometry and figure out, what possible heights, shoulder heights, the actual shooter would have to be able to figure out if, which suspect was actually the murderer.
We did a station over latent fingerprinting. This one was kind of tricky for me at first because we kept thinking we had all these ideas, like we'll just use our own fingerprints, and then we realized if we just use our own fingerprints, we won't have enough for everybody. So we basically took a whole new perspective at this, and we actually set up like an impound where we kept crime scene information, and the kids did a latent fingerprint lift on their own, so they were actually getting the experience of doing the fingerprinting. After they did a successful print, and there's one on there, one of the magnetic ones that you can see. They did 3 different prints. Once they did the lift, they would bring that to us at our impound station, and then we would give them the fingerprints for the crime scene. So we just had to change that up a little bit so they could actually get the experience and still get the analysis with it. With this station, one of the things that we probably should mention, a lot of times the kids, especially the groups that started at the math stations first, they were getting frustrated because they kept saying, well, it's not eliminating anybody, it's not eliminating anybody. But one of the things that they had to realize from that was every station and everything at a crime scene is not going to eliminate a suspect. Sometimes it's more about just the scenario and the motive and the setup, and that was something that they had to understand. The math was getting them the how, and the science was getting them the who. So it was a little bit different for them. Fiber analysis was also something that we looked at. We used some microscopy here. Probably the hardest part for this one for us was just getting the materials and staging them the correct way with our crime scene. But what we did was we had the students do like a fiber lift. They actually had samples that they received from impound of fibers that were found at the crime scene, and then they used the microscope and comparative charts that we gave them to determine what kind of fibers were found in the murder scene, I suppose. And then the last station, the approach that we took with our victim, we had several missing persons. I think we did 8 missing persons posters, and we designed those from where we started. And we went into this with the idea of we wanted them to have information about the victim, but not to know who the victim was, because we wanted them to also develop the motive from this. So we found a kit called Who Owns These Bones? And what the kit does is it allows them to use the leg bones, the upper arm bones, and the skull to identify if the victim is male, female. It also identifies their race and their height. So from this station alone, the students were able to use the missing persons posters that we had displayed, and they had to identify their suspect to help develop their motive from the information that we had presented there. Each one of our groups, I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Titanic Museum in Tennessee, but we kind of played off that a little bit. The overall product that the students are going to do from this is when we started the project, every group received an envelope, and on the inside, we put one of the suspects' names. We didn't want to lead them. We had to be very careful not to say he or she, and that's been the hardest part throughout this whole thing, was not narrowing down for them. But they're all going to open those envelopes when the project is complete, and they're going to either defend or prosecute the person in their packet based on the information that they found the last 2 weeks. So that's kind of where we just pulled that in. So they actually have to do it without saying, oh, I just know it. So, questions? Yes, we're still having fun. We tried to pull up one of our young ladies that's here with Student Senate, but she was presenting this hour. She has given us some very, very positive feedback.
On the very first day when we brought them in, the same young lady came up to me and she said, Miss Crase, I give y'all props. She said, I thought you were going to bring us up here and give us a whole packet of word problems and say, here's your application. She said, but I love these stations. I love the real life part of it, and the kids are enjoying it, and that's what makes it fun for us.
And it's kind of funny because they're fighting. Like, they have, at the bone station, we have had more argument about it's a boy, it's a girl, than anything. And it's hilarious because they're like, well, am I right? Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you want to say, yeah, you're doing good, but at the same time, you're like, well, if I tell you that, you're going to know. So it's hard to be involved and hands-off on this part right now.
Any other questions?